2020 was a tumultuous year. The question we must all ask going forward is simple. What values, ethics, and behaviors from the old world are we going to preserve? And what new perspectives are we going to embrace as we build our future civilizations? This is the New World Podcast with Ariz Kaki and Akil Samji.
Welcome back to the New World Podcast. I'm your host, Ariz Kaki.
And I'm your host, Akil Samji.
Our guest today works at the forefront of innovation within the field of precision surgery and the 3D printing revolution. She currently works at Techfit as the growth coordinator, a company that aims to make surgery more precise, safer, and faster by leveraging the technology and power of 3D printing and virtual planning. She has had experience at various companies working as an application engineer, essentially being hands-on with developing solutions to provide to academia, hospitals, and potential clients. She joined us today to speak to the future of 3D printing in the surgical space, as well as provide us with a bit of insight in her work to build a democratized future within the surgical space. With that all said and done, joining us from Colombia, I would like to welcome to the show Ms. Melisa Cardona. Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
So before we begin, is there anything else you'd like to share about yourself with the audience?
Well, beyond that, I am a mechanical engineer, and I also have a master's degree in mechanical engineer.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, that leads me to my first question. I wanted to ask you, what made you interested in pursuing those degrees?
Well, I think it's something that I had from the beginning. When I was a kid, I always wanted to join the engineering and also the health part, but I didn't want to be a doctor or a surgeon or to be really involved in the medicine in that really specific way. So I start looking for options. How can I join both parts? How can I use the knowledge that I have building things or designing things, but with a really focus in health. So I decided to start in a research group at my university, and it was a biomechanics research group, and there everything started. So I start in understanding how can I join both teams.
So you said that you had you're an engineer, mechanical engineer by training. So that was your undergraduate degree, your bachelor's degree in engineering, correct?
Correct.
Right. Okay. And then that's where you said you found the studying group. So what was exactly like the initial project or the initial exposure that you had to biomechanics in particular? Like I know you just mentioned that you weren't interested in like becoming a doctor or becoming super invested in the process that it took to become or study, like to become a doctor or a nurse or a healthcare practitioner. What was that turning point for you? Like, were you on that trajectory from before that, I don't want to be a doctor? Or were you considering joining medical school, but then something happened?
Well, I didn't consider, to be honest, to study medicine. So I just wanted to help more in the health system. So my first project or the first steps was with people who has transfemoral amputees. This is a really common thing here in Colombia because of different situations beyond violence or diabetes. That is like the tumor things common or the more incidence things here. So I started working in a 3D preparation of the tomographies. So what does it mean? We have a group of patients that was the group of patients from my teachers on my PhD teachers. They were studying the incidence of the usage of the prosthesis. The incidence in the patient, especially in the health of the bone, because there was, at that moment, it was in 2011, there was like a hypothesis that the prosthesis was not so like a good idea for the patients because it was creating damage in the bone. So everything starts with that hypothesis, and we start reconstructing the CT scans of the patients, of the amputees patients, becoming that in a 3D model. And then our other colleagues in the PhDs and the masters start creating some simulations. So at that point in 2011, I was so young. I was just trying to understand what was happening with those patients. And then in retrospective, I really feel or I really connect with that kind of solutions, because from a computer or from really engineering thing, I was able to help a really specific group of patients. So that's something to summarize.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to, you were talking about 3D printing and prosthetics, and I know you work with that in your company. Could you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, currently I'm working. So the topic is surgical planning or digital planning and 3D solutions or the 3D design of the patients. So everything starts again with the CT image. So what we do is convert those images into 3D models, and taking into account that 3D model, we start designing like a CAT design. So we use the surface of the bone of the patients. We use the like all the anatomical 3D model, and we start creating solutions. What kind of solutions? It can be, for example, for trauma. If we have a fracture, a really specific fracture, or a malunion that happens when a fracture didn't came in the right way, we can create kind of virtual osteotomies. An osteotomy is like the cut of the bone, sorry. So we create the planes that will cut the bone. And at that point, we are able to rotate, translate, or to organize the bone according with the specifications or according with the desires of the surgeons. All the process is together. Is an engineer and a surgeon, because we have the tool, we have like the design knowledge, but of course, all the clinical aspects are from the medical side, from the surgeon. So those implants or those things that we create on the software are patient specific or patient match. I like because it's a really, really new solution only for that patient. And patient match is more, for example, the cranial plates, that is something that is more standardized. Even if we design the cranial plate only for one patient, the process is the same for all the other patients. I'm not sure if you get my idea.
Yeah, so it's more you're saying that the company's moving towards favoring personalizing all these surgical processes compared to like a one size fits all industry standard, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. And actually, our idea is to make that custom idea the new standard. Because if we try to standardize everyone, it's not reality. It's not a good treatment for all of us.
Okay. And then moving on to, before we get to TechFit, in terms of working at the previous company, Materialize, as an application engineer, what was the difference between your role currently at TechFit as a growth coordinator and as an application engineer at Materialize? So was that position a bit more hands-on, like in terms of actually working with patients and the subject at hand, so patients or these patients that require prosthetics in particular, and being able to conduct these CT scans with physicians in the room, or is your current like position a bit more like what is the difference between your positions now?
Okay, so as an application engineer, my work was to train the users of the Materialize software. So despite I wasn't creating like the solution for a specific patient, I was able to train companies, to train hospitals, or to train some universities that way that they were able to do the designs, the surgical planning, or do everything with the software. So of course I was involved in all the questions regarding how to do this, or how can I improve, or how can I be more efficient doing my designs. I am able to answer that. It was my role as an application engineer. But then I move on a little bit more for marketing and sales, because besides doing the technical part, besides understanding the requirements of the people, understanding the technical stuff, I was able also to sell the software, to offer the solution, and to find different like market opportunities. So I start at that point in Materialize, I started moving to more commercial role. And then I finished as an account manager there in Materialize. And now I'm totally as sales and marketing in TechFit as a growth coordinator.
I wanted to talk about Materialize. How is it different from other CAD softwares like Fusion 360 or AutoCAD?
Yeah, and the main difference is called the is not parametric. Doesn't mean that we work from the surface. We were able to extract, or with the software, you are able to extract the surface and to design from the surface. And you are able to work with really organic shapes, really difficult shapes that you are not able to work with a parametric software. A parametric software is more intending to work with really specific shapes like a sphere or a cylinder or a box, something that is not organic. And the thing is that the human body or veterinary cases or the things that you are going to 3D print are organic, has different surface that is difficult to handle with parametrics. So that is like the main difference, and that is the advantage, because you want to create really different surface and you want to print it to become physical. And there is a really nice match between that, because otherwise if you have really difficult shapes, you will not be able to manufacture in using, I don't know, CNC or using molds, because it will be more time consuming or more expensive. And the idea is that you can go direct with a 3D printing machine.
And going a bit further into CAD software, so I know you mentioned non-parametric and parametric software. So if when it comes to the industry standard, in particular, the sort of the competitors of your company, is it sort of like main standard across the board when it comes to startup companies that they use parametric softwares, or is it solely like your company's advantage or your competitive edge over other competition that they use, in particular parametric software versus non-parametric software? Because I think it's, for most people, even if it's students at university or regular firms that use CAD software, they're probably using like Fusion 360 or CAD, right? Which is the most like available softwares or open source softwares that people can use. So do you think is that the competitive advantage that your company has?
I think so, yes. And also, there is a difference between an open source and a paid software, and it's the support. The support is really important when you are starting, even as a startup company, or if you are growing with a new product or whatever. If you have that support from the manufacturing company or the company of the software, it makes a difference, because you know that you will be able to move forward faster to create your products. I won't say that one software or the other one will be bad or not. It's more about the time consuming in the learning curve. It's more about the final product that you will design. So it's more about that.
And zooming in back to to the 3D printing evolution, in terms of your specialty within 3D software, this is a relatively new phenomenon, this idea of personalized, I guess, synthetic manufacturing from like a very basic, like something that's been, as you mentioned, a bit more open source for companies in general, because the idea was that, well, you had like industry leaders or prosthetic company leaders who would build this one size fits all, and that was sort of like the standard, right? That was like how it's been done for maybe decades, right? It's only now that we're seeing the innovation curve kind of steepen, and that probably I can juxtapose that with the 3D printing revolution. In terms of the timeline per se of the rate of adoption for the 3D printing technology, how was the timeline looking like? Because like there was this initial thing with all of us in terms of all of our exposure to 3D printing as being this new phenomenon, like in the early 2010s, and the timeline all these years later, so roughly about 10 years later, how has the technology changed? Like, has the price or the access to the technology gotten like lower, has a price gotten lower, so more companies and more individuals have access to it. And some of these medical companies in particular took an application that was supposed to be just, for most people, just a hobby, but have made a commercialized use out of it. So could you guide us through that timeline?
Yeah, so the technology is getting cheaper in terms of the materials that are available for printing, in terms of the machines itself, and also because there is a lot of investment in creating more small machines or more specific machines to print different materials. So in this, so I have a number here that I was reading in the VAIS research. They say that in 2015, it was the highest market revenue in the medical implant segments. I'm talking about only medical solutions because it's my market. But if you split like this 20 years in just in the half, so you will see them are really nice like growth at the beginning, and something that is sorry, I don't know how to say that in English.
Like it expedites. There was like an inflection point.
Yeah, it was an inflection point in the 2015 because of a lot of companies was creating machines, and one big companies were buying another small companies regarding the materials, regarding the 3D technologies. So that revolutioned the 3D printing process. So it was more for all the other companies. But in terms of the software, the prices are really similar or even getting a little bit higher. But not only the softwares for the design, but also the software for analyze the medical image, because they have to be compatible. They have to be, it's like a chain. So everything starts with the medical image reconstruction, and then you can go to design. So in terms of the software, I don't feel or I don't see like a decrease in the prices. As I see it happen with the 3D printed machines itself, like in the hardware.
And I wanted to ask, how do you think countries around the world can adopt like Materialize, like that software to do individualized prosthetics?
Well, it can be Materialize or it can be any other software in the market. How can they start working with? So the key is the education. So if you are able to use it or to use the educational package at university, if you are doing your career, even as a surgeon or mechanical engineer or biomedical engineer, if you are able to train yourself at university, then you will be able to put in practice or to develop your products once you are out the university. So I guess that is the key point, to train the people, but from the university, not only if you are there trying to start your company from scratch.
Mm-hmm. And moving on to, I want to move back to the industry standard versus sort of your company's leadership or in pioneering the innovation. In terms of the specific materials that your company actually uses, so what is the difference that one could expect, like as a patient, for example, or as a patient awaiting a prosthetic? What is the, I guess, that's main difference in particular with the synthetic materials? Because often when we see in 3D printers, like majority of us have seen, like the ones that us two know about, when you hear the word 3D printing, we think of those like cool videos that they print like weird shapes or whatever. But what's the synthetic material? Like what's unique about this prosthetic that makes it a bit more effective than the current standard material is, whatever that material may be?
So it will depend on the solution that you're looking for. If you are looking for a implant or a plate or something that will be there in your body forever, the materials are not different. We are using titanium as the regulation as a standard implant. Why? Is because we need biocompatible things. We need that the mechanical resistance is okay. Like we need to cover everything. So the titanium It doesn't matter if you are doing by CNC or 3D printing. But in terms of the other solutions that didn't exist in the past, like surgical guides, for example, there are things that you use during the surgeon to guide an osteotomy or to guide a screw. That's something that is useful for the surgery time, and then you have to remove them from the patient and throw it off. So those surgical guides are made by polyamides. It's a material that is compatible with the body, but it's not able to be implanted. So it's something to make a difference. Another material that has the same resistance or the same mechanical properties is the PEEK and also the PMAA. So there are materials that are used also with a standard plates or standard procedures and also for 3D printing. So the difference is not there in the material. The main difference is in the design. That is something that was made for you, so you don't have to worry because it will be too large or too small for you, because it will fit. It will be like a unique fit for you. Mm-hmm. So that is the main difference. And also, like the most advanced things are the porosity, titanium, mostly the porosity implants. So it will help, or it is intended to produce bone growth inside the implant. So what we are looking, or what the industry is looking, is that you don't need a second or a third surgery to reposition your implant or to organize your screws, because your bone will grow inside the implant. So everything will match and you don't need any other intervention in the future. So it's something that you can do using 3D printing. Otherwise, it's really difficult to create or to manufacture those kind of implants.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the application of your company's software in the healthcare system, as you mentioned, that you could use these surgical guides to guide physicians while they're in the process of actually doing the surgical operation. I want to bring the patient into question. So currently the industry standard in terms of why your company stands out from the others is the role of the patient. Like specifically in traditional healthcare systems, it's all surrounded around the patient, right? Or the population at question. And in the past, it's always been like the physician is in a state of authority from an expertise sense. And so since the physician, I guess, knows best, it's generally been that the patient has sort of been out of touch with the whole process of knowing what's exactly going on with their surgical procedure, stuff like that. Where does the patient come in with regards to this new solution? Because
and it will depend on the surgery that it will get. In terms, for example, of orthodontic surgeons, and orthodontic is when the maxillofacial bite is corrected. The communicates really early in the process with the patient, and you organize like different expectations. But in terms, for example, in trauma or in oncology, the most important thing is to save the life and to return the quality of life for the patient. So the patient is involved, in my experience, most at the end of the planning or the surgical planning, because the patient plays a role to listen. Okay, this is the surgery that you are going to receive. This is the procedure that we are going to do. This is the final result that we are expecting to have after your surgery. So the patient plays a role at the final stage. And in our experience, we see that it is really important for the making decision process. I'm going with this surgery or not. So it's important because sometimes the patients get really afraid of the situation. They don't understand what's happening. They don't understand if it's secure or not. And if the surgeon shows the patient, okay, this is the procedure, we have planned this, we have these options, we have everything ready with like a plan B, plan C, with everything really organized, it is security for everyone. Not only for the patient, but also for the surgeon, who feels and knows that everything can be reproduced from the computer or from the digital planning to the OR.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk more about the future of 3D surgical tools. Where do you see this going?
Okay, this is moving really fast to the virtual reality. So, and also the robotic things. So there are a couple of procedures that are becoming or doing only for robots and not for like a human surgeon. So I think that everything is moving really fast to that point, and also the simulators for the surgeons trainings, because most of the time they receive some really strange cases that they were not able to practice when they were studying, or it is the first time with that pathology in that hospital. So they are able to train themselves using 3D anatomical models, or they are able to plan all the procedure virtually. So it's something that will help them to have the security and to perform the surgery. So they are moving to the digital part. It's a step that they are doing mostly in maxillofacial departments, then in oncologies and orthopedics, but more in this surgeons are also getting more and more in touch with this kind of surgical planning.
I wanted to go back to what you just mentioned regarding the simulation software. Currently, of course, it takes much more computing power to get the most accurate simulation data. And we know that by studying other trends like the adoption of machine learning and AI at a faster rate, that'll probably help towards, I guess, building more accurate, because there's going to be more real-time data coming in. But where do you see that that another thing that has to be maybe improved, like on a perpendicular or like a parallel industry, i.e., for example, the power of computing? Do you see sort of the advancement into maybe per se quantum computing, or being able to sort of build much more realistic simulations based off of stronger hardware and stronger infrastructure? Do you think that will in the near future contribute to better or more accurate simulations, or maybe moving on from maxillofacial to, let's say, for example, precision in the skull and the brain, which is a bit more of a sensitive area?
Actually, yes. And it is something that will not happen in the future. It is something that is happening today. So, for example, in our company, all the implants that are made for orthopedics go before orthopedics, and also in maxillofacial, they go through ANSYS. ANSYS, for example, to do a simulation, a stress simulation, we need to understand where are the weakest points in the implant, so we can redefine the design and propose another geometry or another material or whatever, so we can have really good perform implant at the end. So indeed, it's something that will get more and more like get more better results in the future, of course. But it's something that is happening right now. So it's indeed something important. And also something that is growing really fast is the fluid simulations, because it's something difficult to understand. For example, our blood flow, what are the restrictions when you have an aneurysms, or when you have some damage in your vascular system. So understanding that from the virtual like the virtual process, or to have the digital simulation, is really important, and also to simulate how the flow will change if you use one valve, for example, or another one. This is something that is really important, and it's something that is happening right now, and we expect to have like better results in the near future.
So you just mentioned something that I wanted to touch upon, which was the sort of fluid simulations, and in your expertise, as you mentioned prior to this interview, that the main sort of area of study would be fluid dynamics in that sort of category, right? And the ability for these, well, I would say this area of study to be applied in a simulation sort of setting. In terms of how that's being done now, like from industry standard, that's not even being considered, I assume, right? The fluids within some of these like systems, whether they be the cardiovascular valves, or i.e., fluids within like some bone structures as well. So that's probably not being considered right now at all, is it?
It's not considered right now for the patient specific because it's really time consuming and it's the cost of the computer cost is really high. For the results that you are going to have. So far, the results that you are expecting in a simulation is something that a surgeon can predict by their own. So there is like a couple of, we need more understanding of the flow simulation everywhere from the universities, from the companies, in order to have like a um, real solution or a real answer that can help direct to the process of the design process of the implants.
Yeah, you know, a lot of our listeners are like Generation Z, which is like post-secondary or in high school. And for those of them who are interested in pursuing the same fields as you, what would you say to them?
Do it. no, no, the idea is to start first understanding the like the process is something that you can really easy find on internet. I mean, understand that everything happens from a really nice medical image. So there are a lot of investment also there because the idea is to have faster tags. For example, it takes longer with less radiation, or the idea is to use MRIs. So there is like a field of knowledge that, or opportunity to improve there in the medical image segment. Then in the 3D reconstruction, there is like another segment that you can explore. And in that segment, something that is happening right now is the automatic segmentation, or that process to convert a medical image into a 3D model is happening thanks to the artificial intelligence or those advancements. It's happening right now. They are doing this automatical. The other segment is the design process. So to understand what are the restrictions, what are the materials and mechanical properties that you will need, what are the potential new materials, something that can be bioabsorbable, for example. That is something that I know it's happening also, but in really specific medical segments, so that you can have a material that absorbs by himself, and you don't have to do another surgery, or especially for the babies or for the pediatric. The other topic or the other field that you can explore is the manufacturing process. So in there is, again, the materials, but it's also the hardware process, because so far the machines are still expensive, or are too big, or are too slow for the process. So there is, like, again, an opportunity to improve, especially in the time that is taking all the 3D printing process, and also the post process of that 3D printing. Because it's known, when you have your 3D printing like ready, you have then to clean it, you then have to remove certain parts. If you are using, for example, I don't know, FDM or stereolithography. So you have to post-process the 3D printing. And so there are like different segments. The good or the nice thing is that you can choose from all of them, or you can learn from all. It has like a little bit from all, and it will be also important for applying in. It can be in health, or it can be in, I don't know, architecture, or whatever field that you want to apply.
Going back to what you just mentioned for our Gen Z audience on how to learn. So say, for example, as you just mentioned from our previous conversation when I asked you about the computing power and how fast and how quickly things are changing, do you see a change to the way our students are being taught in our universities, possibly even our secondary institutions? And what do you suggest to then those people, for example, like someone who's listening, someone's watching right now who might be like 17, 18, starting university or in their last year of like their secondary education, heading off to post-secondary, especially in after this year, after when everything's like changed, either from like an economic standpoint where there's so much competition in the market to not just get a job, but rather to build your niche, right? To focus your niche in, two, for recruitment, and three, just like the rapid pace of how everything's going. do you suggest that people pursue? I know you touched upon open source open source software prior. What could people look for, like young people right now, maybe from your experience? What do you suggest to young people right now when it comes to them being told in other industries that they are able to do open source learning? So for example, if someone wants to learn a new programming language, or if someone wants to pursue how to design something or how to film edit, right? So they can pursue these courses online from open source sites. But something like from a medical standpoint, it's often been assume that because it's such a high level of barrier of entry, people think that, I have to be like a doctor, or which you are not, but you said it yourself. Like some people assume that, I have to be an MD or a medical practitioner to like learn in this field. What do you suggest to people who might be able to pursue like open source learning, and where do you believe that they should start? Like whether it be like a knowledge gap, and like where do you think that they should be able to start first of all?
Okay, so my recommendation is to understand the basics, because even if you learn one software or the other or whatever, all the software will evolve really quick. But if you understand the basics, you will be able to adapt to any kind of software that is in the market. You will be able to even recommend some kind of improvements even for those software. So my recommendation is to understand the basics, to really understand what additive manufacturing means, what are like the basic things for that, also for the simulations. For example, at my university, the focus in the simulation part was the really math behind all the simulation. So we were able to understand the equations. We were able to solve manually most of the time the equations, because the idea was to really understand what was happening behind in the software, behind in the computer. Because if you understand that, you will be able to handle with every kind of software, every kind of process. So that is my recommendation. A second one, maybe it's because I'm a Latin American person, is to take advantage of the internet and take advantage of the global system that we have right now, that we are able to join any course, for example, in the MIT, or any course whenever or whatever there in internet. So it's important to take advantage of that. In order to be bilingual is important, or at least to try to be, because this kind of solutions or this kind of developments are happening worldwide. So if you are able to understand what someone in Germany is doing new, or someone in Israel or whatever, so it will be really important to be like update all the time.
Mm-hmm. And as you just mentioned, when it came to learning behind these things and open source communities, do you think that maybe from an educational perspective, or maybe your company could be the leader at the forefront? I'm not sure exactly if it is, but more of these so-called communities per se online, like take advantage of the global community, or maybe build one yourself in particular with like people who are interested in learning the exact same thing. Because I know you mentioned like you from university, you were encouraged to learn the math behind the abstraction behind the simulations, right? From like a mathematical model. And many people, myself included personally, some might say that the abstraction, if I want to like be an industry leader necessarily, I can avoid the abstraction and just jump into the industry or jump into the application. So for those people that I guess would like to learn hands-on immediately, do you suggest like also maybe looking for like mentors online, especially in a global community like this, as we're headed into post 2020? We don't know how everything's going to shift in terms of how we do education, how we also learn online as well. That could also have tremendous outcomes, like in terms of
And actually, sorry.
Yeah.
Actually, in TechFit, we are creating, or we are working from 2021 in a network of education network, because we understand that it is a requirement, not only for the young people that is starting, but also for the surgeons that are there, and they know that the technology is around them, but they don't understand what's happening. They don't understand the useful on the disadvantage or the advantage things of the technology. So we are trying to create that network between the people who has a lot of experience in this area and the rest of the people that is wanting to learn. And I will keep you posted on that. Or you can follow us in TechFit company. It's TechFit -DS. Because we are working on that. It's really important. And from now, So you have to mix between the hands-on activities and also the basics, because otherwise you will learn how to use a software. And if the software changes, if the software doesn't work, what are you gonna do in that case? So it is not like the key point to know how the software does the things. So it's most important, or the most important thing is to understand why the software is doing this process, or what are the other options if I cannot follow this process, if I have to use another software, for instance.
I know places in Europe like Sweden and Netherlands, there's a lot of startups coming out with like climate change initiatives. Do you think Latin America is the like sort of leader for like 3D prosthetics and the type of work you do? So if someone was interested in going into that field, do you think they should consider maybe like studying or getting involved in companies in Latin America?
Unfortunately, no. It's happening in US, in Europe so far, like all the new technologies and so on. So far in Latin America, we are using the like technology that is already developed in US and in Europe to create some practical things. But there are few developments or few really new things coming up from Latin America. So what we are doing right now, so it's a shame because we have like the knowledge and we have like the intention to develop more, but our resources are limited or really bad distributed. But the thing is, here in Latin America, there is a lot of startups working in the practical thing or creating the products using the technology. Well, Brazil, in Brazil, there are software developments talking about specifically in Vesalius. It's a Brazilian software. But I don't know any other build or any other software or development built here in Latin America. Well, at least I don't know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you again with regards to how we can improve education, in particular with regards to actually creating leaders, as you said, people who actually have the intuition or the so-called ambition to solve some of these problems. I know you said like understand the basics. Often, I think schooling, either A, sometimes people just skip over it. B, schooling probably doesn't do a good job as kind of explaining why they're teaching what they're doing. Or when particularly some students go to their post-secondary, their universities, it's sort of like a big broad spectrum of classes. And then sometimes people don't know exactly where to focus, or there's not really that much explanation or abstraction explanation behind certain concepts in biology or from an engineering perspective, as you are. In the math behind some of these softwares. Where do you think the education system can change itself? Maybe it's changing on its own, as we already spoke about with open source technology. Do you, as you said, with regards to TechFit developing its own online community, do you have a suggestion for education or education curriculum makers around the world, or some of these education departments that kind of change the way they approach teaching people about subjects like math in particular?
Yeah, but it's a really long topic. To a lot of recommendations that I can do for the educational system. So the thing is, also far, what I know so far, they are doing like not practical things. So you can combine those bases with the practical. You can be a recommendation for the universities or the educational system, and also to join their students with another universities, because most of the time you are really close and you think that you only know or that you are only able to do what is in your university, and that's not reality so far. So if our recommendation for the individual or also for the educators is to connect the students with other universities, with other labs, with challenges that are happening in the reality in the region, or with companies that are starting in the region and they need someone young to do like practice. So to connect more the students, because we spend, at least talking about me, we spend like 5 years thinking that the only thing that you are able to do is, I don't know, inside four walls. It's not the point. So you're so far or thinking that you are able to really spread your voice and to really understand from or to learn from other people worldwide.
Mhm.
So the connection will be like a point. And also the scholarships. There is a lot of scholarships uh, that you are able to join or to try to participate.
Mhm. When it comes to the education system, as you just mentioned, a bit more practicality, do you suggest maybe, I know it's getting competitive for people to now secure internships, because it used to be that internships were the solution, right? Like you would intern at a company and then you could learn on the job. And it does help fill the gap between, as you mentioned, the people who are trying to study the academic part, as well as the people trying to study are trying to get their hands on experience. So do you think that within that space in particular, young people shouldn't feel shy in particular, even if they're missing some of the core skills, learn the basics, but they can learn it while being mentored or maybe even interning for free at the moment with the company leader? Do you think that that should be encouraged as well? Do you encourage young people to do that?
Yeah, for sure. And it's something related with the patient. So if you feel that you like a topic that you have like the patient to do something, go for the line, because it is really difficult to work in something that you don't love or something that you don't really like. So it's like you are going to be encouraged in something that you really like.
Mm.
So try to find that kind of topics. A really easy way is just to list the topics that you don't like, so that way the list will be shorter, the things that you like,
Mhm.
and then move for those topics. It's something that helps me all the time. So when I feel that I don't know where to focus myself or what to do, I list the things that I don't want to do at that specific decision making process that I want to do, and then I start like checking. Okay, I will try with this. If it doesn't happen in the way that I want it, I will move to the other and then to the other. So yes, you have to be more proactive. You have to really show the world that you are able, that you want to learn, that you don't have to be perfect to start something. Because if you are waiting to be perfect to start, you won't start. Never. So it's most important to learn in the way, but that you have the attitude to learn, to say, okay, yes, I'm not perfect right now, but I'm trying.
Mhm.
And it's something that is really easy if you are following something that you have patience of. Otherwise, you will be just, I don't know, wait, looking for the window, or I don't know.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, did you use the list to figure out that you didn't want to be a doctor or surgeon?
Yeah, indeed. Actually, I least like, okay, no, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be in the health system, but I don't want to be a surgeon or.
Yeah, true. One more question before we go to the last part, which is our three takeaways. I want your prediction on the future of the industry in particular. Maybe you can expand your answer, maybe towards, maybe you can speak on the medical community per se. What is your plan? What is your outlook with regards to
Well,
the next 5 years, especially post 2020, I guess, the way our world is right now? What is your sort of 5 year, maybe possibly stretch it to 10 years? Where do you see the medical community with regards to the same precision surgery principle, the idea of personalization? Do you see that moving into a field, let's say like genomics, for example, where I know that that's not exactly your field, but I know that there's been plenty of investment and plenty of work being done in personalizing genetic treatments, along with treatments with regards to delivering pharmaceutical and medicine and biochemical drugs to the bloodstream and to various systems around the body. What is your prediction with regards? Maybe you can comment on the 3D printing revolution. What other areas possibly do you see it touching to the surgical precision surgical area, and then three, maybe possibly even the rest of the medical community.
well, according with the research, so there is like a couple of companies who does research regarding these topics. There is one called BIS Research, and in their trends, they say that in the coming years, even for 2022 and then the second 2028, they are expecting this market or this specific 3D printing in medicine to grow annually like 23%. So it's something that is growing really, really fast. not only in the implant market, but also in the 3D printing procedures or in the 3D printing revolution, to say so. So it's something that is growing uh, really fast. If you compare this kind of annual growth with other markets that are, for example, in 8% or even 1%, so you will notice that the health system will require all the years, all the time will require our attention, our resources, and our global like resources in that. If you talk about, for example, oncology, yesterday in February 4 was the World Cancer Day. We still have a lot to know about the cancer, about the treatments, about the early detections, about preventions. So the healthcare system or the healthcare market is growing, and it will work all the time because we are humans and we are expecting to last more and more years. And of course, the people that are eldest requires more resources from the healthcare system. So this market is growing all the time.
Yeah, and I know it goes back to your mission statement. I think I've seen on your LinkedIn and your profile, which is the goal to democratize your ability to scale and the scalability to scale this to basically most hospitals, particularly not just in wealthier countries, I say also upcoming newly industrializing nations as well, particularly sub-Saharan Africa and South America and Latin America, along with Asia. You see like democratization as being another thing, because in our previous episode we sort of spoke about this trend of democratization of not just technologies but the way we think about things, primarily after 2020, considering what happened in our world. Do you see democratization as being something that doesn't touch like necessarily like a space, for example, like cryptocurrencies, but like everything, even medicine, the way we think about AI, the way we think about machine learning, the way we think about potentially even computing power? Like, do you see a movement towards decentralization versus centralization?
Well, it's something that I hope happens. So and I feel that it will happen if more and more companies start offering this kind of solutions, because those the democratic part or make this more standardized, it will depends most on the governments and most of the for example, here in Colombia is the insurance systems or the people who really pays for the procedures. So if they know or if they find that there are options, there is not only the standard things but also like these custom made solutions, they will have options to decide. So it will become step by step more democratic for the rest of the solutions. So I guess it will happen, and I hope it happen. I don't know when, but the thing is, for example, or for instance, in this pandemic, we realized that we have a lot of holes in our healthcare systems, and it's something that pop up everywhere in Mexico, in Brazil. It just pop up because we understand that our healthcare system was not protecting us as a person or as a citizens. So we realize about that. So our hope is that since we have already realized that we are bad, we can
Change it.
pursue, yes, or try to find another ways to do the things.
Innovate, democratize, for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, that brings the end of our question prompts. But before we wrap things up, we just want to move on to a recurring segment of our show where we ask our guests to give us their 3 takeaways. These takeaways can be about anything said on the podcast or even advice you want to leave for our Gen Z listeners. So with that being said, what are your 3 takeaways?
3. Okay. So the first is that if you are listening this kind of podcast, if you are listening this kind of of content, is because you are looking for be more proactive in the things that you want to do, or you are trying to be update in all the topics. Try to connect with people worldwide, try to find more and more information and to compare what is in the internet, not to believe in everything, but compare and have like your own knowledge. Another thing is that we understand that the healthcare market is growing, and we understand that we need more resources and more development. So if you like this kind of topics and if you like this kind of ideas, all the new people or the people that wants to join us in these kind of solutions are welcome, and in all of the fields. As I mentioned, the medical image, the 3D reconstruction, or the designs or the 3D printing. So you are welcome in any of the fields. And the last one can be, yes, like for the education, try to, it's more like a recommendation not to follow only what you are learning in a university. Try to move forward on that. And for the healthcare system to really understand that we need more patient-specific solutions. Something that can help, can be more cost-effective for the system itself, because you are avoiding a second, a third surgery. You are avoiding time consuming in the OR. You are really, really doing savings. So try to understand that and to move forward in this revolution.
Perfect.
Yeah. And where can our audience find you? Like social media or websites?
Yeah, I will promote the company because it's where I'm more active right now. So you can find us mostly in LinkedIn as TechFit Digital Surgery. And if you Google that in Google, sorry, if you Google that, you will find us also. It's TechFit-DS, or in Facebook or in Instagram, it's TechFit Digital Surgery. And we are growing also in this education network because we really understand that it's something that is missing right now.
Perfect. So if you guys listening, you guys can basically catch and stay in touch with Melisa for regards to her company pages, and you can, that will essentially keep you in tabs on some of the latest innovations, some of the latest things that they're working on. In particular, as Melisa mentioned earlier, the education network that they're working on for their goal for 2021 and moving on into the future. So if you are interested in open source education, if you're interested in getting on board but don't know what to do, first follow their company pages. We'll link them in the description. And then you'll also be able to keep tabs on what's exactly happening, what areas of study in particular that Melisa mentioned in her 3 takeaways, and basically start doing some research with regards to medical MRIs, medical resonance imaging, or anything else with regards to 3D simulation technology or 3D printing. And with that, we would like to end the show there. Melisa, thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast today. We would like to thank you. And for the audience, we'd like to thank you as well. So we'll see you guys later.
Okay,
Bye.
thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Check us out for an audio-only experience on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other outlets. Follow us on all of our social media, and please consider supporting us on Patreon. All of these links will be in the description. That's it for us today. Welcome to the new world.